So today we're going to go straight out of camera to Lightroom preset, to Photoshop, action set, to finish. See you in a sec. Here's some through the lens shots from the Z7 and the 85 1.4G. We shot like this all day, face detect, and didn't miss any shots. Alright, so here we go. So you can go to my site prophotoedits.com and then go to Photoshop Actions and Lightroom Presets and download everything you need to follow along with me as we edit. Guys, so today's edit, we're going to start with this photo I took of Annabelle with the Z7, the Nikon Z7, and I was using the 85 1.4G on this shot, and we just found a cool fence. It was just actually a fence, and had to lean out from it a little bit to give it a little bit of you know, more of a depth of field look. You can see her hands are completely blurred out, and I was using face detect, and of course it always, you know, gets the eyes as long as no one's really moving super high speed. It's not resolving, but I promise it's in focus. And the only thing I did was one of my action set, my preset bundle that you guys can get from my website, and one of the 70 some presets that I made was the PPE toning 11, and I like this one for more of a moody shot, editorial style, maybe a fashion type of look. And the only thing I did was adjusted the exposure a bit. I brightened it up just a bit, and I brought the shadows up just a touch on this one, and the highlights down just a touch. And you have to do that on each photo. The only thing I would really mess with on these presets is your exposure, and shadows are normally, you know, where they're supposed to be. Highlights, maybe bring them down just a touch. It depends on what we're going to do in Photoshop, but I like to just make sure I can see the eyes clear. And let's jump into Photoshop and use my action set and finish it off. Okay, so in Photoshop, the first thing I did was, well, I went a couple steps ahead because I wanted to choose my the toning preset, but I figured out what I wanted to use. So we're going to go with WVU tones for this particular image. But first, I just duplicated my background a couple times, more than necessary, just because I was trying stuff out. I didn't want to make you wait through it. So what we're going to do first is always start out with PPE, frequency separation. This is just my typical thing, and it gives you the instructions on what to do, but I'll walk you through it real quick. I usually start with my radius is 10. It seems to work pretty well on portraits that are mid-range. And run that, open it up, and choose your lower frequency layer. And then you choose your lasso tool, and you want to have your feather set to what your radius was. So it was 10, so we have 10 pixels on this. So what we'll do is we'll just start with the forehead area. Circle that whole area, and go up to filter, and go down to blur and Gaussian blur. And 5, I usually stick around 5. That kind of is my little happy point, but I don't overdo this step because this is just step 1. And then you can run it again without having to select the whole thing again if you just go up to the menu and choose it from the top. So I'll speed this up, but after I run every action, I do Apple Control Shift E, and that'll give you a stamp visible layer just to keep things nice and organized. We want to go to Skin Perfection, run that on the layer that you're on currently. Now go back into the gray layer. Your helper layer is going to help you see all the gradients. So let's turn that on, and just how the action gave you the instructions to go to 70% flow, or 70% opacity, I'm sorry, and 1% flow. And choose your color as white to get, you know, rid of the darker areas, and black to get rid of the lighter areas. So I'll speed this up for you guys. All you need to do with your pen tool and the color white is to draw over the darker areas. What you want to do with the gradients that you're seeing right now is you want to make the darker areas exactly the same color as the lighter areas. And this process can take anywhere from 5 minutes to 15 minutes, depending on how much time you spent with it in the past. You want to hit the dark areas underneath the eyes. You want to hit the dark areas around the nose. You want to hit the dark areas around the corners of the mouth. And if anything's overexposed, change your color to black and draw over that area until you get them looking close to the same. And here's the before and after. You see the before and after. So that eye is done. So you can continue this process and try not to be heavy-handed on this. I mean, this is the way that you can, do the Russian look and really make people plastic, which it isn't a bad look. It's just a look if you're going for that type of look. I don't typically do that. I like to leave people, kind of looking like people instead of porcelain dolls. But if you want to, you can go overboard and just completely smooth every gradient out until it's all the same color. Of course, except not your cheek areas and things that are darker on purpose. But just hit any uneven areas with the white until they're all smoothed out, and do it to taste. And that's what we fixed. Now, looking at the picture, you see what I'm saying? We fixed a lot of the skin issues. So now this is what I want to do. I want to go to dodging method 2. Just work our way down. And this will tell you the instructions on what to do. But it's really simple. As soon as you click on this black layer, it'll switch the tool for you to the tool you need. The dodge tool. Set that up for you. And on the first pass of this, I typically go in and just fix really quickly. One pass over any of the darker areas. They're still just a touch darker. Now this tool right here is a lot heavier than the one we just did. You only need one swipe. Okay, so run the dodging method 2 action again, and this is where we really use it for what it's for, to do the highlights. So usually I swipe over the eyes one time on each eye, and then what I'll do is I'll start with my brush tool being a bigger size, and I'll use my brackets to reel it in a little bit. So first pass will be bigger, second pass will be slightly smaller, and then with the bracket tool make it even smaller for the third pass. And I usually only do 3 passes on each part that needs highlighted. And a lot of times you just kind of follow where the light's falling on the face, and don't overdo it, because it's really easy to over highlight somebody's features. And a lot of times I just want to make sure that my highlights are even and they're popping out where I want them to pop out. The lips, sometimes I hit a little bit more on a really close portrait, anywhere where you see the lights really falling. So once you get done, if you figure that you've done a little bit too much, just go ahead, and what you can do is bring the opacity of that layer down a little bit, and we'll burn it all in just a second. So I'll run this one more time, dodging method 2, to do the highlights in the hair. I just like to keep it on a couple separate layers in case I need to adjust them after I'm looking at the image a little bit later. So go ahead and just follow the highlights that are on the hair. This was a very overcast day, so we had nice even light. But you want to just follow the highlights on the hair, and don't do too much because we're going to burn the hair after we're done with this. So now we're going to concentrate on the eyes. We're going to run the eye sharper PPE action that I've made, and it'll give you the instructions. They'll pop up on the screen, but what you want to do is you want to get a white brush and set it to 75% and then 100% on the flow. And all I do is really just, of course, go on your mask layer, the black layer, and then paint over the eyes one time and the eyelids as well. And then it'll make your eyes pop out and be just a little bit sharper. And I usually hit the eyelids too, and that's gonna make your eyes sharper. After I do that, I go back up to dodging method 2. So you wanna just paint where the light is falling in the eyes on dodging method 2 again. You're pretty much just dodging the highlights in the eyes, and with the unique curve that I've created here, and it'll really make the eyes pop. Now, what you want to be cautious of is overdoing this step. You don't want to give somebody alien eyes on a portrait where you have smoky makeup and it's an overcast day and there's not really a direct catch light in the eye. You just want to do enough to make it interesting. I I don't want to look at alien eyes when I see a portrait. And if you do too much, you can always back it down a little bit. So now we're going to burn a bit. We're going to use PPE dodge and burn, and we're going to use the brush tool, and we're going to set the opacity to 8% and the flow to 100%. And you just want to draw along the areas like underneath the chin, underneath the lip. The eyes are pretty smoky here, but normally you can hit underneath the eyes a little bit, on the cheeks, wherever the makeup is. I like to hit the hair that's closest to the face, and just really concentrate on underneath the chin and maybe the bones that are popping out, um, the darker areas there on the collarbone and underneath the shirt collar, inside the hair where there's a little bit of shadow. I don't do too much on this. Leave this pretty light because you don't want to add too much contrast here, because on the next step we're going to run my PPE contrast pop action, and that's really going to give you the contrast that you need back without overburning. It looks terrible when you overburn. I will go to contrast pop. You see what I mean? That's the action that I've made that it just brings back a lot of the contrast for you that we've taken away to get the tones that we want. So here's a fun one that I've made that I like to use to get any type of yellow or red or any type of extra color out of the eye. You can use it on teeth too, just to give your whites of your eye, a really white hue instead of anything else. So you just set it to 100% flow, 100% opacity, and color on the masked area in the whites of the eyes, and you'll see them get whiter. And then you can adjust that to taste. So here's the fun part. Let's go into WVU tones. It's one of my 8 action toning presets that you'll have in here. And I'm just switching it on and off right now so you can see. I've separated it into 2 folders when you run it. There'll be the exposure compensation and the levels that raise the blacks a little bit. And then the actual folder where you have all the tones, the golds and the blues and the curves adjustment and the color balance. So what you want to do is to find your happy medium. If it's too much, you just grab the folder with the tones in it and pull the opacity back a little bit until you find your happy place. Now remember our contrast pop. You can adjust this again now that we ran the action to bring back in a little more contrast. So now we have more contrast and the cool tones. So to finish this image up, we're going to sharpen it a bit. We're going to run staged sharpening. That's the one of the actions that I use in the final stages. And some people like to over sharpen their images. There's really no right or wrong way, but it just looks more pleasing to the eye if you have several different layers and several different frequencies all being sharpened on different amounts. And this is going to create 4 different depth maps and sharpen them all at different frequencies and different amounts. And it really does give your image a special character and a nice amount of sharpening that's pleasing to the eye and doesn't look overdone. So let's go in and turn it off. Now turn it back on, and you can see it added a little bit of contrast, and it definitely sharpened up where we need to sharpen. And this point, I'm done with this. So let's group all these together and show you where we started at the very bottom. That was after the preset toning, and we came into Photoshop and did, you know, one of the, I would say probably 6 different actions out of the 20 or 30 that I have that I use, and that's where we ended up, and I'm happy with that. All right, so I'll see you guys on the next edit. Later.